It starts with the kind of wind that worries fences, the kind that sounds like a breath held too long, then let go in one shudder. Somewhere in Wisconsin, a lake slaps a rotten dock and throws it one nail looser. Somewhere in Illinois, a kid tapes a bedsheet ghost costume closed with the last strip of masking tape and thinks about how the mirrors in his house have been showing corners that aren't there. And somewhere in Indiana, a man in a laminated brown paper bag mask buttons a thrift store coat and practices walking like he belongs on your street. There are sirens on and off, but never for long. The noise keeps missing the danger by a block or two, like the town is flinching in the wrong direction. If you don't know the name yet, you will by the end. The Hollow Man, tall, silent, wearing the same pale mask over something even quieter. He doesn't save people to be loved. He saves them to keep the pieces on the board in a pattern only he understands. Tonight, he moves 3 times at once. 1 foot on a dock, 1 on the wrong side of a dream, and 1 on a small town's main street that still has a shoe repair shop because the owner won't admit no one needs it anymore. It's Halloween. That wind comes back around. The boards creak like they're remembering something. And we start where the water is blackest. Story 1. The Hollow Man meets the summer camp slasher. My name is Anya. I'm not the bravest person in our friend group. That's Gabby, who once pulled a fish hook out of her own thumb without crying. I'm the one who packs an extra flashlight and pretends it's for fun. We signed up to help with the Halloween teen retreat at Camp Splinter Lake because the brochure said Autumn Canoe Glow, and because we were bored enough to mistake fog for romance. When the bus rolled past the broken sign, Splin ER Lay E, we laughed like the missing letters were a prank the camp played on itself. We took pictures of our breath in the cold like it was proof of spirits. Later, I'd delete every photo that showed the dock. Camp Splinter Lake sits like a bruise between a pine forest and a lake that's too still when there isn't wind and too noisy when there is. The cabins are numbered but not in order. There's a shed with a dented aluminum canoe hanging from hooks. Its bottom is furred with lake scum and the kind of hair that sticks to things when you're not looking. Our counselor, Brendan, said the power goes out sometimes, and not to freak. He said this while his hands shook. The night air was the kind that makes you think about how thin fabric is. Halloween was tomorrow, but the camp decorated early. Plastic skeletons on the mess hall roof, a scarecrow that leaned like it was eavesdropping. We heard about the slasher before we saw anything. Every camp has a story. Splinter Lakes is a guy who never left after the summer they closed the archery range. No one knew his real name, so kids called him the summer camp slasher like it was a dodgeball team and not a person. Allegedly, he takes one thing from every kid he scares: a shoelace, a camp patch, a piece of hair. They said you could track his path by things you're sure you lost but didn't. I didn't believe it, but I could name 3 things that went missing between the bus and our bunk: my scarf, Gabby's nail file, and a page someone had torn from my notebook and folded into a swan. The first scream came from cabin 7, the one with the door that didn't like latches. We ran with our flashlights playing tag on the dirt. The scream wasn't big, it was shallow, like somebody trying not to be the person who screams. Inside, Tyler stood pointing at his bed. The sheet was sliced in neat parallel lines. Not torn, cut. 6 careful cuts, as if someone had measured them. No one admitted to a knife. Brendan checked everyone's bags, trying to grim joke his way through it. And then the lights went out. Not camp-wide, just cabin 7. When they came back, a shoelace Tyler swore he had been holding was tied in a perfect bow on the underside of his bunk. That's when we decided we weren't sleeping. We told Brendan we'd keep the mess hall lights on. The big room smelled like wet wood and marinara. You could see the lake through the windows, how it moved when the wind didn't. There was this one dock light that kept failing in a pattern. 5 slow flickers, then 1 long burn, then black. I counted. 5, 1, black. When I looked down, someone had pressed a playing card into my palm. It wasn't a full deck card. It was cut from cardboard, printed badly with a red circle and a slash like a no smoking sign. In pen, across the middle, "Don't go on the dock." At 12:17 a.m., We saw a figure on the far end of the dock. I wanted to say it was just a black stump and moonlight playing dress-up, but the figure tilted its head at us like it had heard my lie. Brendan started toward the door until a knife hit the mess hall wall and stuck there, the old kind with the stacked leather handle and a smell like pennies. No one saw it thrown. We backed up. One of the boys, Lucas, said he'd been cut by accident earlier, a shallow nick on his wrist, and he showed us a perfect red line so straight it looked like someone had drawn it with a ruler. The slasher didn't come in. That was worse. He stayed where wood met water. I kept thinking about the card. Don't go on the dock. The wind pushed in these slow breaths that made the mess hall door knock against its frame. Then the door stopped knocking. It held perfectly still as if someone was holding the other side. Gabby whispered, "Count again." I watched the dock light. 5 slow flickers, 1 long burn, black. This time, after the black, something else. Something pale stepped into that everything dark and occupied it. A tall man in a featureless mask, same height as the doorframe, no hurry in the way he moved. He didn't look at us. He looked at the lake. The camp director made the kind of sound adults make when superstition outruns career. "Sir?" she said to the tall man, as if he might be a ranger with terrible taste in masks. He didn't answer. He stepped past us like we were furniture. When he reached the door, it swung open on its own. He held a length of twine. It dragged behind him like a tail. It wasn't a threat. It was a measurement. In the dark between the mess hall and the dock, something else moved too. Fast, low, clever as a rat. We never saw a face, only a smear of darker dark and the glint of metal where a hand should be. The tall man, the hollow man, and I knew it the way you know your name is yours, walked to the edge of the dock and tossed the twine so it lay over the boards, every foot marked with a knot. The slasher danced at the far end, shivering lamplight over a shape made of angles and habit. The lake made its small, wet applause. The hollow man waited for the wind to die. When it did, he tapped the dock post 4 times with his knuckles. The dock light responded with the rhythm I'd been counting, 5-1 black. Except this time, the last black seemed deeper, like a door when a hole is behind it. What happened next felt like switching radio stations mid-song. The slasher charged, all elbows and knife and a sound like someone laughing into a pillow. He hit the first knot in the twine and stopped dead, as if his feet had stuck to something he couldn't see. The second knot, 2 steps later, made him bend forward in a posture that looked like a string puppeteer had tugged the wrong control. The third knot made the knife fall. He reached for it, and the 4th knot pulled one arm askew with a crack I felt in my stomach. He tried to crawl. The 5th knot made him flat, like he'd become a shadow without a person attached. Gabby grabbed my hand. I realized I'd been holding my breath so hard my chest hurt. The hollow man didn't touch the slasher. He didn't need to. He picked up the fallen knife and set it on the dock. Then he pointed at the no-dock card still crumpled in my hand, like he was reminding me I already knew the rule. When the dock light did its long burn, he stepped off the boards onto the black water like it was a floor. It didn't hold him. It just made space for him, and then he was gone, the lake seaming itself together as if embarrassed to have been parted. Brendan shook himself like a dog out of a bath and whispered, "We're leaving." Director Shaw nodded like she had finally remembered her job again. We made a line to the bus, flashlights pointing at our ankles so we wouldn't trip on roots that weren't there yesterday. The slasher lay on the dock like an abandoned costume. When the dock light went black the last time, we didn't see him again. In the bus's rear view, the scarecrow leaned farther, as if it cared a little less about standing upright now that the game was over. On the highway, Gabby checked her wrist. The red line was gone. Tyler retied his shoelace without looking. I reached into my pocket for my scarf and felt something paper-thin and damp. It was a photocopied brochure for Camp Splinter Lake, older than ours by decades. Someone had circled the picture of the dock in black marker, then scrawled across it, "He moves in lines you can't see." I looked out the window and swore I saw a pale face in the bus's own reflection. Maybe it was a mask. Maybe it was the lake looking in at us from the dark. We got home by sunrise. At school, someone asked about our fun fall trip, and I said fine, because there's no way to explain what it feels like when the night sides with you for once. I looked up the camp later out of habit. The first result was a scanned newspaper clipping from the 1980s about a teen retreat cut short after unexplained dock collapse. No names, just the sentence, "No one was hurt," which is almost never true unless someone made it that way. I deleted the last photo on my phone, moonlight over a black sheet of water, and felt something in the room relax, like a held breath finally let go. Stories like this have been submitted by viewers who claim the Hollow Man followed them. If anything strange has happened to you, leave it in the comments. Story 2. The Hollow Man versus the Dream Manipulator. My name's Mateo. I work nights unloading trucks. Sleep comes when it can, which means dreams don't have time to get fancy. Lately, though, they've been showing up dressed like someone else's. It started with a rumor at work about a guy called Sammy the Butcher, who'd figured out how to sharpen things in your sleep. You wake up with the imprint of a blade you never owned. My coworker showed me a sliver-thin cut on his forearm and laughed, except his laugh had that sound some men make when they're not okay. "Dream paper cut," he said, and he pulled his sleeve down too fast. Halloween doesn't mean much when you punch a clock, but the neighborhood made an effort. Plastic gravestones leaned at angles in yards. The old diner hung a free coffee for costumes sign that only the high schoolers abused. I tried going to bed by 9 because my shift starts at 2 a.m. I kept the TV on low to trick my brain into thinking someone was awake with me. That's when the power blinked. Not off, just thinner, like it moved to the other side of the room and watched me from there. The TV showed a face with no features for one frame, then went back to the weather. I dreamt I was in my old apartment, the one with the fire escape that rattled like cutlery in the wind. The hallway was wrong, longer than it had been, and every door had the same dent at knee height like someone had kicked them all once. I could hear a butcher paper unwrap sound coming from the stairwell. It's a very particular sound, that chalky crackle, like sand rubbing glass. I followed it because that's what you do in dreams, walk into the place that would make sense to avoid. On the landing was a plastic meat tray with a price sticker that said, "Sammy Special." The tray held a box cutter. The blade was already out. When I looked up, someone was standing at the end of the hall in a butcher's coat that didn't fit right, sleeves too short, collar too tight. He wore a grin the way someone wears a bandage, to cover a wound, not because they're happy. Even in the dream, I knew this was Sammy, and even in the dream, I felt the small coward parts of me root for the alarm clock. He didn't walk. He rotated forward, feet gliding like he was on a meat locker rail. The box cutter in the tray blinked, yes, blinked, like an animal, and then was in my hand, warm as if it had been held a long time by someone else. The first cut along my forearm was like drawing with a pencil that didn't want to mark. Thin, insistent. It didn't bleed. Sammy watched the way a butcher watches the line. "Open," he said, and I don't know if he meant the skin or the door behind me, which I realized was now the door to my mother's house, 1,000 miles and 12 years away. The hall light stuttered. Each flicker made the whole scene shift 2 degrees, like we were on a Lazy Susan, and someone kept testing how far it would turn. The cut deepened to hair. I woke up sweating and checked my arm. There was nothing, not even the red tram line you get from scratching your own sleep. I told myself to be a grown man. I went to the sink for water. The faucet handle turned with that too smooth motion you only get in dreams, and I dropped the glass, which didn't break, but thudded like a heart. The bathroom mirror had fog on it even though I hadn't showered. I wiped a circle clear. For 1 second, the room behind me wasn't mine. It was a tiled corridor with hooks on the wall and a floor that sloped toward a drain. A figure stood there, tall as the doorframe, wearing the palest mask you can imagine without it becoming a face. He lifted one hand and tapped the mirror. Once, twice, 3 times. Each tap sounded like metal on bone. There are rules in dreams you only remember when you're in them. Don't follow voices that use your name like it owes them money. Don't step through a door you don't recognize. Don't look too long at the floor. But there's another rule I'd never heard until that night. Don't give him the fifth. I didn't hear it as words. I felt it as a pressure on my chest, like a palm saying enough. From the corner of the hall, something pale uncurled from the shadow where a radiator should have been. The tall man from the mirror, the hollow man. He didn't walk. He articulated, like a thing unfolding to its full size. And then the hall got quiet, the way a kitchen does when the refrigerator clicks off. Sammy's knives went softer, like he had to hold his breath to keep them sharp. The hollow man raised a hand and traced 5 invisible circles in the air, not touching anything. On the 3rd circle, the hall lights stopped flickering altogether. On the 4th, I noticed the numbers on Sammy's knives had changed. They were all 4 now, the same engraved wrong on every blade. On the 5th, the knives retracted by themselves with a sound like measuring tapes going home. Sammy hissed, a meat locker fog betraying a warm mouth. He pointed at me like I had done something unfair. The hollow man turned his hand palm down and pressed the air like a parent calming a dog. The floor fell an inch. No, not fell, accepted weight. The dream decided it was a different room. We stood in a supermarket aisle under busted fluorescents, the kind that give everything a disease color. No one else was there, but carts lined up like they'd been abandoned mid-run. The boxes on the shelves had names like Sleep Cuts and Nightworks and Sammy's Choice. Every box had a thin slit in it. Sammy put his hand on a box and drew out a blade longer than any shelf could hide. The hollow man put his palm on a freezer door and left a clear handprint that ate the frost. Without looking at me, he tilted his mask a fraction, like he was telling me to count. Sammy was fast in that unfair way predators are when you're tired. He tried a sideways cut that didn't need a 5th. The hollow man stepped between us without drama. The blade grieved itself dull against his mask and fell as a paper strip that said, "Sale. No blood, no heroics, just refusal." The supermarket flickered back into the hall like the dream was embarrassed. I caught a glimpse, a corkboard with missing posters that were all the same face under different names. Mine was there, stapled crooked. The hollow man lifted his hand and pressed 2 fingers where my throat meets my collarbone, light as a coin drop. The world snapped phases like a transformer tripping. We were in my bedroom now, truly mine. The sag in the mattress, the coat on the chair. Sammy stood where the closet should be. In his place, a sliding door hung an inch off track. It didn't reflect me right. The hollow man faced it, mask close enough to fog the glass. He tapped it once. The glass showed a corridor tiled in off-white squares I recognized from old butcher shops. He tapped twice. The tiles turned black. He tapped a 3rd time. The glass became a lake, black as a power outage. Something moved under the surface, the suggestion of a body or a root or a rule. Sammy reached for me with hands that wanted to be knives and couldn't remember how. The hollow man lifted his hand, the one that had touched my throat, and drew an invisible line from the sliding door to my wrist. My forearm tingled like it had fallen asleep and woken up bitter. A thin red line rose there, 4 segments, not 5. Each segment brightened like tally marks. The 5th never appeared. Sammy snarled through teeth I couldn't see. He backed into the off-track door and met himself there, a butcher in a place where knives can't count to 5. He thrashed. He tried to make the number happen by force. The door accepted him the way the lake accepts everything with patience. Then he was gone, the glass settling into a plain wrong mirror that showed my room like it loved it. I woke up with my alarm screaming like it had something new to say. My arm had 4 faint red lines, already fading, as precise as tally marks. I went to work to stack boxes in a warehouse that smells like cardboard rain. 3 people called in sick from night terrors. I didn't tell anyone I'd been somewhere that felt like a hallway wearing a butcher shop costume, or that a tall, silent figure had used math to rescue me. I just kept rolling tape across flaps in long, straight pulls. On break, I stood by the vending machine and saw a reflection in the glass that wasn't mine for one blink. Not a face, a mask. The tallest shape steps out of corners when the night needs a referee. If you're still watching, you're not alone. Most people turn this off by now. But you want to see what happens next. Maybe you should stick around, or subscribe before it gets worse. Story 3. The Hollow Man ends the Halloween massacre. They call him the Sack, which would be funny if the bodies didn't make the punchline unkind. He wears a brown paper grocery bag laminated into a mask so the rain can't ruin it. 2 eye holes, an extra wide smile slit someone cut and then stretched with tape from the inside, making it a permanent grin. The bag's printed logo says Haller's Market. The market closed in 1997, but the Sack's mask is brand new every Halloween, like someone's printing nostalgia at home. Grayford police tell people to stay inside, but this town loves porches, and the porches love being sat on. The siren sounds at 9 like it's in a contest with the wind. I'm not brave. I'm a nurse who works day shift and falls asleep with the TV on. My name is Claire. I live 2 blocks from the shoe repair shop where the owner still polishes boots like the army's coming back any minute. I put out a bowl of candy with a "Take One" sign and then sat behind my screen door reading an old crime paperback because that's what the night asks you to pretend it wants. Kids came in slow waves. 1 plastic dinosaur, 2 fainting princesses, a boy who insisted his werewolf mask made him a dog and barked at my mailbox. The Sack isn't a legend here. He's an annual event, like the fair but worse. Last year he put a kitchen knife through a jack-o'-lantern and left it on the police station steps like a complaint letter. The year before he dragged scarecrows into the street and propped them sitting on the curb, each with a bag smile taped over whatever face they had. People move away from Grayford and call to ask if he's still doing his thing. We say yes like we're discussing an uncle who can't stop telling the same joke. He came to my street at 9:41 p.m., right after the little kids stopped and right before the teenagers got brave. The Sack walked like his shoes didn't bend. Not stiff exactly, practiced. He paused under the 1 working streetlight, tilted his head to look at each house as if reading a list. The lamination on his mask caught the light and gave his smile a wet edge. He stopped at Mrs. King's porch first because she leaves her TV loud and laughs at the commercials. He stood at the bottom step. He didn't go up. He just waited until she noticed. She did. She stood. He lifted a hand like he might wave. He didn't. He held it there like a choice. I called 911 because you do. Even when you know the call is a script, everyone's read. We're aware, the operator said, and I pictured a woman in a headset staring at a board full of scared red lights. The Sack left Mrs. King's steps and came to mine. He looked at the "Take One" sign, and then at me. I could see his eyes through the holes, not their color, just the shine. He reached for the bowl and slowly, carefully, took 1 candy. He held it up like proof he could follow rules. Then he peeled the "Take One" sign off the bowl and smoothed it over his own chest, slapping it twice to make the tape stick. "Please leave," I said, hating the tremble in my voice that made the sentence sound like someone else had written it for me. The Sack stepped back 1 step, then 1 more, then stopped. He wasn't leaving. He was widening the stage. From 3 houses down, a teenager on a bike yelled something I didn't catch and threw a Tootsie Roll like a stone. The candy bounced off the Sack's shoulder. He turned and started toward the kid. The grin didn't change. The whole neighborhood felt like a held breath. Every town has a night where it tries to decide what it is. Grayford's was choosing between hide and hope and run and warn. Before anyone could pick, the wind shifted and knocked the streetlight into a slow flicker. A shape unstacked itself from the shadow near the shoe repair shop and became taller than the window it had been in front of. He shouldn't have fit there. He did. He stepped into the lamplight and the light failed to land on him right. Same pale mask, same patience. He didn't look at me. He looked at the paper bag smile like it was a counterfeit bill. The Sack didn't stop. He adjusted. He pulled something from inside his coat, laminated too. A grocery receipt with nothing printed on it but the word "total" repeated down the paper like a mantra. He flicked his wrist and the receipt stiffened, edge sharp as a ruler's corner. He swung. The kid on the bike tried to turn around in a narrow space and nearly fell. The Hollow Man moved between them without hurry. The receipt hit the air in front of his mask and became ordinary again, limp and embarrassed. It fluttered to the asphalt and slid under a parked car like a roach. Neighbors who had been pretending not to watch came out of their houses in apology motions, hands raised, shoulders up. Someone yelled, "Get him!" Like this was a movie where bravery and timing line up. The sack backed toward the intersection, steps measured like he was counting sidewalk squares. He held his hands out, fingers splayed, showing he wasn't holding a weapon. That didn't make anyone safer. He tilted his head at the hollow man, and I swear I heard a laugh, small and angry, come from inside that paper grin. The hollow man reached up and touched the streetlight pole once, like checking a pulse. The flicker settled into a rhythm. 4 quick beats, 1 long, silence, then again. The sack pulled a kitchen knife from his coat. Old, wooden handle, blade honed thin from years of someone else's work. He held it like a proper thing that finally fit his hand. He rushed. The hollow man didn't retreat. He lifted one arm and traced a square in the air, each corner crisp as chalk on a school blackboard. When he finished the square, the sack's run turned into a short, helpless walk, like someone had glued his feet to a floor that wouldn't disclose itself. He swung anyway. The knife met one edge of the square and changed into, this is true as anything else tonight, a laminated Haller's Market membership card with a barcode and the word void stamped through it. This is the part I don't know how to tell except to tell it. The hollow man turned his mask toward me, just for a second, and then toward the kid on the bike and Mrs. King and the others who'd come out. He raised his hand and spread his fingers. 5. Then he folded one finger down. 4. He folded another. 3. He kept going until a closed hand hung in the air like a stop sign. The streetlight obeyed and went black. For one long breath, the block vanished, houses and trees and us. The darkness wasn't empty. It was full of choices not taken. In that dark, something made of wind and paper and a wrong smile tried to move left and found left was gone. It tried right and found right had been borrowed. When the light came back, the sack stood alone in the middle of a square chalked on the street that hadn't been there before. The square's lines were bright as if drawn by a child desperate to make a rule real. His knife, no, his membership card, lay at the edge. The hollow man tapped each corner with 2 knuckles. At the last corner, the lamination on the sack's mask bubbled like it had been held to a stove. The smile sagged. The sack reached up and for the first time tried to take the mask off. He couldn't. The tape inside had fused. His hands trembled. He looked at us, not to be saved, but to be seen. The hollow man stepped forward and held out a length of twine, the same as the lake. Every foot nodded. He laid it along one side of the chalk square. The sack put his hands out like surrender, and then, this part is burned into me, he broke. Not his body, his try. He slumped, knees hitting the pavement, forehead bowing into the grin he couldn't undo. The hollow man lifted his hand as if to bless or to tally. The streetlight flickered the last pattern. 4 quick, 1 long, silence. On the silence, the square folded inward, not physically but like paper learning it had always been on a seam. The sack's mask crinkled. The lamination peeled back to reveal pulp. It turned to flakes that blew like dull snow across the intersection. Underneath, there was a face I didn't know and don't need to. He was just a man then. He cried without noise. Police arrived too late to be part of the story, just in time to handle the credits. They cuffed the man on his knees who couldn't seem to find his name. They stepped around the chalk like it might still decide things. Mrs. King brought a blanket, because that's what people do when they can't fix crimes. The hollow man was gone. My take one bowl had been turned, so letters faced my door. The kid with the bike asked if he could go home now. We all said yes like a prayer. Grayford went quiet in that way small towns do after something loud enough to become a new date. I didn't sleep. I cleaned candy wrappers from my porch and found, under the top step, a torn piece of paper from a grocery bag. It had one word printed on it in a font that made everything look cheaper. Return. I don't know if it was a message or a receipt. The wind picked up again, the same one I think was back at the lake and the hallway and whatever passes for a supermarket in a dream. Somewhere, a tall figure counted down with his fingers, and waited for the board to reset. People think the Hollow Man is a monster. I think he's a rule that shows up when the calendar needs one. New horror drops every Hollow Wednesday. Subscribe before he finds someone else.